think of discovery as sort of being like that old man you'd see on the beach with a metal detector. And like every question you sort of ask, right, is a wave of the metal detector around. And then boop, if you get something there, okay, what do you do if you're that old guy on the beach? Well, you put your metal detector down, you pick up a shovel.
Welcome to the 1% Edge podcast, where we dive into the journeys of extraordinary guests committed to getting 1% better every day. Today's hot topic, coaching and performance management. And I know that's a mouthful, but we'll break it down for you. In fact, the person I have to help me break it down is I'm honored to have Ian Grace. Ian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Carlos. Pleasure to be here.
Vice President of Sales at Acrylus. Did I say it correct?
You got it, Acrylus.
Awesome. Welcome, Ian. And to start out, why don't we do this? Coaching, performance management. Let's put some, structure to it. What do you mean by coaching and performance management? And then we'll break down into different parts.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, as leaders, right, even as you were talking about before in our previous conversation about the poem piece and the educate and motivate, right? I think, coaching people and helping them be the very best of them, that they can be, they go hand in hand, right? I feel like you're doing an injustice to someone from a performance management perspective, which we're all, whether we want to realize it or acknowledge it or not, as sales leaders, we are in performance management inherently. And unless you're coaching people, you're not really exactly setting them up for success, right? Coming out of nowhere and not giving them proper feedback, not giving them ongoing coaching, and then suddenly having a performance management conversation out of the blue. That's very unfair and sort of against my core values. So I think they really go hand in hand, right? In order to be a good sales leader, a sales manager, performance manager in general, you have to be comfortable and skilled at coaching people.
Agreed. In fact, on an earlier podcast, I had this guy named Dave Brook, who wrote the Sales Manager Survival Guide. And one of the things he said, and I think it goes along with what you think as well, as, what's your main role as a sales leader, for example? And most people say, well, to deliver the number. He goes, no, that's just something you get measured on. Your main role, your people.
That's a lag measure. Yeah.
Yeah. Your people's job is to deliver the number. Yes. Your job is to get the best performance out of those people. And yes. And I agree with him. And it's kind of a mental shift a lot of people need to really make, especially as they first get into leadership and management.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think, as a sales leader and a leader just in general, when my perspective shifted from being an I and a me guy to a we and an us type of person, everything sort of changed, right? The performance of my team, my career trajectory, my ability to motivate, people and inspire people, my credibility, all of those things changed. And I think you're right. Like ultimately at the end of the day, the quota, the target number, that's a lag measure. 4DX talks about lead measures and lag measures. Well, you're hitting quota or not hitting quota, that's a lag measure. What are the things that you're doing before that or with your people, through your people to get to that number, to get to that lag measure? That's the key thing. That's what you got to be focusing on.
But it's something, especially we see in sales, is a lot of times we take the better salespeople, and for career progression, we make them managers. Mm-hmm. So what they've shown is they're great salespeople. And to reward them, we tell them, we're going to stop doing that. And now you're going to start growing people, coaching people, inspiring people. And it's a totally different skill set. Totally. And I will honestly tell you, Ian, I failed my first year. I hit my number, but I failed my first year. And my manager, and I still remember Brett telling me this like yesterday, the year ended. I'm like a rooster with my tail feathers because I exceeded my number. And he says, hey, how about next year you try to become the manager? And at first I'm like, what the? But he was right. And then he explains, You were involved in every deal this year. You need
Yep.
your team to be you
Yep.
so that you can move into your new role. And that's, as we talk about being better coaching and performance management, it's a different job than being a great salesperson.
For sure. And I think what you fell prey to, I did, right? Like, I think it's probably a common misstep of nearly every first time manager. It's sort of like that sales management by will. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I will hit this number by my sheer will. I will be involved in every deal. I will touch everything. And, like your boss at the time said, I had a boss once tell me, Michelle said to me, Ian, this is great. You did a great job here with the year, but your job isn't to sell for the five people that work, on your team. It's to create five of you,
You
right? You are a great salesperson. I know you can sell, right? But I need five of you because you can't always be on every deal and you can't always be with every customer. So what do we do when you're not? What do we do when you're on vacation? Or what do we do if there's sales meetings happening at the same time? And unless you're setting them up for success on their own, it's not scalable or realistic for you to be everywhere all the time and everything to everybody.
100%. So what are some of the things you've done to make that transition? And because I mean, obviously you've made it, you're a VP of sales now. Uh, what are, if we were talking to others, first line managers or second line managers, what skills or activities would you recommend that they do to help get on that journey of transition?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly one of those things. And the first one is a sort of a natural evolution of that first step, right? So if you are going to be on those calls, right? Let's say as a first time sales leader, you're gonna be on those calls. You should be on those calls at least to get your kind of finger on the pulse of things. However, this is the key step. Unlike young Carlos and young Ian, instead of dominating the conversation and driving the conversation yourself, observe and let your team do their thing. Obviously, you can interject if you feel, kind of things going off track. You can be that gutter bumper to keep the ball going down the lane, but not dominating, not taking over the call. And then following that call, immediately give feedback, right? I'm really big on real time feedback, not letting it sit, whether it's positive feedback or constructive, feedback. You got to say, so when you said this, this, and this, did you see how they reacted? Or did you see how when they said this and I interjected, what did you see me do there? Right. So whether it's, giving them feedback about their behaviors or calling their attention to something you did, everything comes down to the real time feedback. So you want to be there, you want to observe in the beginning, just don't take over. Use it as an observation opportunity.
Got it. So, and I've had some other podcasts about this over the last 20 years, and maybe I'm just talking more about tech, but I mean, it's been generally good times. We've been able to show up, show a cool product, and send the proposal over and win more than our fair share of business.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I have been around enough to go, look, things kind of ebb and flow, right? The market gets a little easier and it gets a little tighter. And
Sure.
I think these days it's definitely a little tighter.
For sure.
So now we're asking managers that this didn't necessarily have to sell through these tight times to coach their people on selling through tight times. See what I'm saying?
Yes.
What would you recommend that they do to kind of pivot?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to the basics, right? Like I coach baseball, and for my son's baseball teams, and one of the things that we're always talking about is the fundies, right? Like practicing the fundies, hit the fundamentals, squaring up to a ground ball, field funnel, footwork, follow through, right? All that stuff, right? The 4 F's of fielding a ground ball. But I think of those fundamentals, and in these lean times, not skipping steps, trusting the process, right? Like a traditional sales process of sort of discovery, demo, proof of sort of value or proof of concept, negotiation or, discussion of pricing, contracting, right? That's sort of a tried and true, more or less. Sometimes it changes slightly, but more or less that's the sort of natural progression of a sales cycle. But
Right.
in these times, it becomes even more paramount that you do all of the little things right. So I think going back to the process and really in these lean times, having taking your time with discovery, making sure you're going deeper, making sure that you're asking the right questions, making sure you're not only uncovering the pain or the problem, or as Keenan would say, the gap, right? You're not just doing that, but what is the dollar impact there, right? How much is this costing them to continue doing nothing? How much would it save them to move to you? How much would it make them to move to you? Whatever the dollars of impact are, ultimately, 99% of key decision makers, that's what they care about. It's the dollar impact. And so I think in these lean times, when you have to do those little things super right, because if you don't, if you missteps there, if you rush through the process, when you get down to the goal line and you're discussing pricing, unless you've done a really good job there, that's where you're going to see deal slippage over here, right? So at the 10, your 10-yard line, make sure you're doing all the right things so that when you're on their 1-yard line, you get the ball in the end zone.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. In fact, a lot of times, like, I work with clients, we roll out a process, they're all gun ho, and then it go, so let's talk about what's working and not working. And, well, Carlos, they really need help at negotiating on the price. And they go, okay, so what was the differentiated value? What? And how much is it costing them today? How much are we saving them or making them?
Yes.
Well, in general, you think it's X.
Yeah.
And in a way, I always want to say, look, you can always recover, right? We can jump in, we'll figure out a strategy. But you got to also realize on the next deal, which is your point, you got to really do that way back here in discovery. When you shortchange discovery and they go, man, it's costing us a lot. You go, great, let's go on.
Yep.
What's a lot?
Exactly. And I think I would bet good money, Carlos, if you were to look at all tech companies' sales teams and you looked at the vast majority of their closed lost, and you were going to do a post-mortem retrospective sort of look back,
yep,
more than 50% went awry by a shallowness in the depth of their discovery. That would be my bet. If you told me to put money on something, it would be they didn't go deep enough in discovery.
That would be my hypothesis, and what I've kind of seen in working across multiple companies. Hands down, I'm with you. It's because they all want to say they're doing it, but they want to rush through it.
Right.
And some organizations, sadly, they come from this, you got to get to the demo as quick as you can. Right. Hey, if you do a proof of concept, man, they're definitely going to buy.
Right.
If you set yourself up to do a bad demo and a bad proof of concept, all you did was extend your sales cycle.
Yep.
And started with a negative reaction, which takes 3 times more effort.
Spend time, Carlos, with someone that actually you shouldn't either can't buy or frankly shouldn't buy. So there's two negative streets you can go down by doing this. Like either, like you said, taking way longer in your sales cycle, or spending time with somebody that's actually a waste of your time, right? Like those are two possible negative paths you can go down in that zone, and both are bad.
Yeah, the discovery side is so critical. In fact, it's one of my pet peeves when people jump to product or solution way too early.
Yes.
And in fact, even when you see customers push for it, because I get this, Carlos, we're looking for some sales training. I've heard about you, or I used you before. Let's get a proposal together. Let's go.
Yeah.
Sounds wonderful. Let's take a step back, because you're convinced your boss doesn't even know who the heck I am.
Right.
And I don't know what your organization does. So propose what? I don't know what I'm even proposing. Yep. So he goes, I know it. He goes, well, Carlos, I know what you're going to ask me. Well, great. It's going to go a lot faster.
Right. Perfect. And let we can get through it then. Right. But I mean,
and I have
that's the topic. That's the topic. We talk about coaching. Probably that is most coached upon, or a topic that is most discussed by me with my team is that topic. Like, we are most often doing coaching conversations around the depth of discovery.
All right. So when we say the word coaching, is it role playing it? Is it strategy? How are you setting it up, and is your team receiving it? Because that's the other little gotcha on the back end where, sometimes people do coaching as, well, I told them what to do.
Right.
Well, that's a form of coaching.
Yeah. Yeah, so role playing is big, right? Definitely, I'm a big proponent of role play. My CRO is a big proponent of role play, so role play is definitely something we do a lot of. The big thing that I've started to do more of lately that has gone really well is, we use Gong, with at here at Ocrolus, and what we'll do is in on a deal coaching call is I might, let's say I'm working with Carlos, my sales rep. Let's pull up, Carlos, I want you to, ahead of our call, send me any call that you'd like, right? Good or bad, just send me a call of one of the deals that you're working right now. And then, so what we'll do is they'll send me that call and we'll watch that call together. But what we're doing as we're watching and listening to that call, it's typically the first, usually a disco call. As we're watching that call together, Carlos, what I'll do is I will share screen and share the call and we'll listen. And as we're listening, I pause it. So it's real time feedback in the middle of the call. So
Oh,
I'm not looking at it beforehand. I don't have a preconceived notion of the notes that I'm going to give. We're watching the game tape together. And so when they ask a question, that let's say the customer asks a question, I will listen to their answer. I'll pause it and say, "So you said this. What else do you think you could have added there that would have been, maybe a little bit more impactful or driven them more towards our value proposition?" Or I might say, "If somebody says this, would you consider saying something like this?" Or they ask you this question, I would answer their question with this question, right? So we're literally doing it like stop right there, boom. Let's talk about, we could have gone A, B, or C here, or we could have questioned with this, or this, or hey, so you asked a really good question there. They gave you some great answers. Then you just jump topics. Why didn't you follow up with, well, who's doing that today? How long is it taking? How much does it cost? Who's your current vendor? Why didn't you go deeper down that treasure? I often use the
yeah.
analogy that, I think of discovery as sort of being like that old man you'd see on the beach with a metal detector. And like every question you sort of ask, right, is a wave of the metal detector around. And then boop, if you get something there, okay, what do you do if you're that old guy on the beach? Well, you put your metal detector down, you pick up a shovel. Now I'm going to start digging in that spot. Well, every question I ask, right, is getting me deeper to the treasure chest. So once I've found the problem, I don't want to like then jump out of the hole before I get to the treasure chest to another topic. I want to keep shoveling until I hit the top of the treasure chest, flip it open, and there's the gold, right? So that's sort of that sort of coaching methodology I find is really important. Like when we're doing it, when we watch it together, there's a lot more of aha moments where I say maybe consider saying this or maybe asking this, and then doing it real time. The team has responded relatively well to that as well because it's not just me talking at them; it's us having a conversation about the situation and the different paths they could have sort of choose your own adventure responded with.
So, Ian, I really love that example. In fact, I'm stealing your treasure chest, old guy with the metal detector example. I think that's awesome. The other thing that you said too that I really loved, you said, "Hey, it's like we're looking at the game tape." So, we're not on the call that's going to happen tomorrow just yet, but let's look at one that you've done in the past, like the game tape, and, pick and choose what we could have done better in that game that now we want to try to apply and improve on the next game. I think those are two great analogies. I like to think about sales like sports
So do I.
a lot of times. And, it's interesting because in sports, the best athletes usually practice. In fact, not only do they practice, they're usually the ones that are there first to practice. But
Absolutely.
sadly,
And
in
and
sales, there's this mindset. Go ahead. Sorry.
I said and after practice.
Yeah. But in sales, sometimes there's this mindset like, oh, yeah, I have done this before. Yeah, I've been doing this a long time, Carlos. I mean, that's like, name your favorite basketball player going, I've been playing since I was a little kid. I'm just going to show up for the games.
Yep.
right? No plan, no strategy, no practicing, no getting into rhythm, just jumping in. And sadly, a lot of times in sales, it's the mindset that we take, and versus thinking of it like a team sport and really going after it.
Yeah, no,
Um,
I agree with you.
so on this coaching thing, there seems to be these new, everybody talks about AI, a new wave of AI tools for doing coaching. In fact, I've had a CEO of one of the companies on here. I've partnered for another one in my sales training business. Have you seen some of that where you could literally take your Gong recording, feed it in, it'll assess it and give you feedback back? Have you run into any of those? I'm curious.
Yeah, we're actually starting to look at potentially adding one of those to our tech stack. Obviously, the other kind of basic ways of doing that. I mean, Gong itself has sort of feedback and
Some
coaching, and kind of an ask me anything, or what your risks are, and gives you briefs on things. So just the AI even within Gong is very intuitive and gives really good feedback. But yeah, to your point, like I think that's something that what I might, if you were to ask me, what am I spending time on as of late? That's stuff that I'm spending time on is what are the other AI technologies that are coming out that are, ways that we can get faster, more efficient, better with our feedback, better with our coaching, better with our sales process. That's a big part of it. So I'm definitely a big proponent of that and trying to make things smarter and faster and easier.
Excellent. All right. Another aspect that we talked about was coaching and then performance side of it.
Yeah.
And obviously, there are metrics that we need to track to see how we're doing, right?
Mhm.
It's one of the reasons I like sales. I didn't feel like, they don't change the rules of the game halfway through the game.
Right.
I know how to score. I know what's expected of me. Okay, I got it.
Mhm.
Next year, you might up my quota and change my territory, but that's next year. For this year, I know the rules of the game.
Mhm.
Are there certain performance metrics that you feel that, hey, these are critical to me, or these are the ones that I find the most value?
Well, I think it depends, right? So when it comes to certain things, like I also lead our sales development team, right? So for sure, when it comes to prospecting, making a certain number of calls and sending a certain number of personalized emails, and right, that's very much an input equals output type of activity, right? Prospecting in general, I think, is a key metric, right? So what are you putting in? How many dials, emails are you sending? Personalized, whether it's outreach sequencing or personalized emails, right? All that stuff matters on the day to day and the week to week to create X number of meetings, to create X number of completed meetings, to create obviously new opportunities, right? So
Right?
I think that those are big metrics that I look at. The other thing I think is key things to zero in on is like what are the metrics as applicable to your calendar, right? So if I was to look at Carlos's calendar, I always think of a salesperson's time as three activities, Carlos, right? I should be trying to get somebody in front of me. So that's the prospecting, preparing for somebody to be in front of me, or I've got somebody in front of me, right? So your calendar, based depending upon the certain percentages of how many people you have scheduled to be in front of you, well, how much time you spend getting people in front of you is going to depend on that number, right? So I think, I always look at a calendar and say, like, what percentage of your time are you spending? Are you spending 50, 60% of your time, 70% of your time prospecting? Because in the beginning, you should be to build that pipe, right?
Right?
I think those are key. And then, if you get to the other end and listen, you've got 20 appointments this week with prospects, great. You can maybe throttle down some of your, kind of some of your pipeline building. But that also leads to the other piece, right? Kind of the old adage of the 3 or 4x, kind of your quota in total pipeline. I also break that down to even opportunity units. I'm really looking for reps to have anywhere between, I would say, 15 to 25 working opportunities at a time. I would say that, depending upon the type of sale you're doing, if you're doing very large enterprise sale, maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's not that big. If you're doing sort of mid market or inside sales, I would say certainly that's a good number. But those are the numbers too. Like how many units of pipeline do you have? How many dollars of pipeline do you have? What is that in relation to your total quota? The standard sort of, I think what we would call the old school basic stuff. Those are things that I'm always looking at. But then I also add those other things like, what does your calendar management time look like? And some of that is something I always like to key in on.
I like your thought on the calendar because it's funny. I was just talking about this on the podcast, and I saw some research about this about a month or more ago, which said that reps are only spending 20 some odd percent of their time really selling. And you kind of go, huh? But I see it in some of my clients. We got all these processes for onboarding, ongoing education, new process plans, internal meetings, you know, and then let's face it, you can spend the whole day just answering internal emails. It seems like,
Yeah,
right? So getting them to time block their calendar on their critical functions, and I agree, prospect needs to be one of them. Not,
absolutely.
I think we got a little lazy along the way where, SDRs or XDRs, whatever you want to call them, get us the leads. We got to be responsible for producing some of our own leads
Right.
and maturing it. And that takes time and effort. And if you don't it's like putting time at the gym. If you don't put time at the gym, you're not going to get the results.
100%. 100%. I think in a perfect world, what your SDR is bringing you should only be supplemental to what you've built for yourself, right? It should
Yeah.
just be gravy on top in a perfect world. You're building your own pipeline, and whatever you happen to get from them is just awesome, awesome extra.
In a perfect world, I agree with you. Sadly, there's some organizations where
For
they're
sure.
literally getting 80, 90% of their activity
Yes.
all all given to them,
Yep.
right? And this muscle of prospecting is like it's atrophied, right?
Yes, for sure.
You
And
know,
that's, going to the coaching piece, right? So, with our team, we have a sort of a development and growth plan, Carlos, where SDRs go from SDR1, SDR2, SDR3, and then they can move into inside sales, right? So,
great.
as we train and I train those folks and they come up into the inside sales role, literally the first thing that I tell them is, so the thing that got you here, the thing that progressed you through SDR1, SDR2, SDR3, got you to be sitting here as an inside sales new trainee, was your ability to build pipeline for other people. And I literally use the word that you just said, don't ever let that muscle atrophy. Like, that is your superpower that got you where you are. So today, as you're an inside sales rep, continue. Now you're just spending the time you were spending building someone else's pipe is the time you spend building your pipe. That's the difference, right? And as you go to mid market and you go to enterprise, don't ever let that muscle atrophy, because that is a tremendous gift to have and will set you apart from the vast majority of mid market and enterprise reps if you can always continue to have the ability to build your own pipeline.
I love that. I'm with you. So, Ian, I could talk to you all day. So, I'm going to turn this around. Ian, tell us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yeah, so I've been in sales now for, it'll be 24 years. August 30th was my first job out of school, 2001. So it'll be 24 years in sales. I've spent the vast majority of that, I'd say 18 of that in sales management and leadership, in software, as well as the automotive retail space, and the credit union sort of financial services and banking spaces. I'm a father of one. I've got an 11-year-old boy named Tanner. He's a big baseball player. That's our main passion. We're going to Cooperstown this weekend,
Nice.
for the big tournament. So I live in Rochester, New York. I grew up in New York City, but live up here in Rochester now. But it's been a pleasure being here with you today. And I certainly, when we first met and connected on that sort of growth mindset thing, even the very name of your, that 1% edge, that 1% better every week, 52% better every, sort of every year. That's something that I immediately connected with, because again, that was something where when I changed my mindset to a growth mindset, my career had been kind of flat. And then when I switched gears there, it just literally took
Took
off like
off.
a gunshot. So
That's awesome.
I can't emphasize enough. I love the ethos of what you're talking about here and what you're doing with the podcast, because that's what it's all about: getting 1% better every day, every week, and every month.
Awesome. All right. So, what's your 1% edge these days? What are you working on to get better every day?
Yeah, the big thing we touched on it earlier is really how can we better use AI? Oculus is an AI first company, and we're looking every day. I'm spending now a good chunk of time either looking at or talking to, answering a lot of these SDRs now where I typically wasn't. That are anything that are in that AI space and utilizing AI to either make outreach faster or easier and prospecting easier or sales enablement and training easier. That's the big thing. I think obviously we'd be ignorant if we didn't acknowledge that AI is not only our future, but it's here now, and it's time to get on that train or get run over by it. So I'm spending a lot of time researching and looking into a lot of that AI stuff and how it can make me a better leader.
Awesome. Yeah. As people worry about it coming for the job, I tell them, look, here's the truth for today. People leveraging AI are going to outperform people that don't. So
Yep,
let's jump on the bandwagon. You wouldn't think about being a sales rep and not using some sort of CRM to track your contacts and people behind
exactly.
it. And in the future, you wouldn't think about doing this job without using these sorts of things within AI going forward. And it's a way to kind of just not get rid of the fear and go after it. Let's see what really works and what really delivers.
Yeah, absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Awesome. Hey, if people want to get a hold of Ian and get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, you can obviously connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm Ian Grace, the VP of Sales at Oculus. Kind of nice picture of me looking like me. Or you can obviously email me at igrace igrace at oculus.com, at OCROLUS. Either way, you can
Excellent.
email me or connect with me on LinkedIn. Always happy to chat with folks and give advice to new sales leaders or talk about sales, behaviors and how we can all get better. I love that stuff.
Ian, it's been a pleasure having on the show. Uh, we see the world a lot the same way. Maybe it's because we're both originally from New York.
Maybe.
All right, everyone, that does it for this week's episode. If you found some value in it, please comment back, subscribe. We would greatly appreciate it. And I wish you nothing but the greatest success. Ian, thanks again for being on the show.
Thanks, Carlos. Appreciate you.